Welcome again to the Lighthouse podcast. My name is Alex Camargo. I'll be your host for today. I have a special friend here today with us. He's somebody that I admire and look up to. Before we get this started, can you do me a favor and click that subscribe button and then share this with somebody after the fact. If you enjoyed the podcast, I'm pretty sure you will. Welcome, Mr. Frank Cammarata.
Thank you, sir.
How you doing, sir?
I'm great. Good to be here.
See you.
Thanks for having me.
So happy that you could be here with us today. You're such a person of inspiration to me for the probably 10 years that I've known you and that I've been around. And it's such a pleasure to have you at our podcast because you have so much value to bring to people, and you have so much history in you at such a young age, you know, and you can talk about so many different things. I'm glad you said
at such a young age because I was starting to feel very old.
No, you've accomplished so much, and it's always been a pleasure to be, you know, to run into you into church, run into you at church, and you know, spend a few minutes with you almost every single weekend, and be able to learn so much from you or to hear a cool and interesting story. Of course, I know all of that, but our audience doesn't. So, who is Frank Cammarata?
Well, first off, thank you. That's very, very kind words from you. I appreciate that very much, and the feeling's mutual. I've for as long as we've known each other, I've really admired and valued our relationship as well. You're a man of many traits and talents yourself, so the feeling is mutual.
I appreciate that.
Thank you. So, who am I? Boy, that's a great question. Who am I? So. I'm a guy with very humble beginnings. I'll be very honest with you. I grew up in very middle class America, and I had a dream at a young age, a fairly young age, and I was able to put together some opportunities for myself, and ultimately. Found a lane, if you will, that allowed me to pursue my dreams and to kind of chart my course, if you will, for my future. And I guess it really, for me, it started my career. And I guess we'll get into that a little bit. But for me, at a young age, I was probably 8 or 10 years old, somewhere in there. I can remember my dad was a singer in a doo-wop vocal group in the late 50s, and the name of the group were the Dreamers, and they were fairly successful. They had 2 top 10 hit records out on Cashbox back in the day: Teenage Vows of Love and Because of You. And they traveled the country, and they toured, and they did some really fun things, some neat things. And as a kid growing up, the memories of that as a kid, with my dad being a singer and a band and music, I was always around music, and that was my first glimpse, if you will, or first exposure to something creative, right? I think, and that ultimately, as I reflect now, I look back, that was kind of the nucleus or the very beginning for me. On this creative path that I've taken over many years. And so, watching my dad, his group perform and all that would have a profound impact on me later on in life as it would be. And so I can remember early on, in my childhood where, I would go with, my mom would take me to go see my dad perform at Palisades Park in New Jersey. And just being in that environment, being in that atmosphere was electric, even as a young kid. Ultimately, what I decided to do is, as I was going through high school, I was getting older, going through high school, I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. Who did I want to be? What did I want to do? And I did not consider myself back then a college kid or college material. To be very, very honest with you, I was a very, very much a C student at best in high school. I struggled in high school. I struggled. And back then there were no such thing as IEPs in school, or, you were either smart or you were the other, I was kind of in between. I wasn't, I was somewhere in the middle, but I struggled. And I remember I couldn't wait to get out of high school because I wasn't doing well. It wasn't fulfilling. And so, all my friends were going off to college, this thing about college, that's all I was hearing. And there was me, I, at the time in high school, was working for a supermarket chain. I was working for a chain called Grand Union. And I was a deli manager. And at 19 years old, I was making, $19 an hour at the time.
Oh, wow.
Which was amazing.
Yeah.
It's a lot of money. I was, back then, if you were a deli manager, you were in the butcher's union, right? And if you're in the butcher's union,
you get union wages.
You get union wages, right? It's a beautiful thing. You get benefits, you get union wages. So I'm 19, I'm in the butcher's union, I'm slicing cold cuts, and I'm thinking, the world is my oyster. This is incredible. How can't get any better than this? And then all my friends are going off to college. Well, I did the deli thing for probably 2 years, or close to 2 years. And I was successful at it. I was very good at it. I'm a people person. I like people. I truly enjoy being around people and talking to people. And so that job was good for me. It was easy for me, over the counter, talking to people and making their day and all that kind of stuff. It's, I love that. But what happened was Grand Union recognized that I was doing well. I was making profit in the deli. By making profit, I mean that I could cook back then. I learned how to cook at an early age thanks to my mom and my grandma. And so what I would do, what I brought to the table for Grand Union, was I would cook meals for the deli.
Yeah.
And I would put the meals out for the lunch crowd,
That's awesome.
And I'd have people come in and buy these lunches. And everything that I created, everything that I made that sold for lunch was profit, was pure profit. So Grand Union sat up and took notice of that, and they said, hey, wait a minute, we could use this guy at this store, and then they would put me in another they'd move me, from close to my home to another store 35 minutes away, and they'd say, here, work here for 6 months, go do the same thing over here. And then after 6 months, they'd say, okay, now go work over here, over this store. And after a while, it was getting really draining on me, because I didn't want to be bouncing around different stores. And also, at the same time, I realized it was like after almost 2 years, the bell went off in my head, and I said, wait a minute, what did I do? What was I thinking? I'm going to be 40 years old someday, and I'm going to be slicing cold cuts for a living, slicing deli meats. Now, not that there's anything wrong with that. I'm not putting down that's, I'm not trying to be disparaging in any way, shape, or form. But for myself, I wanted something more.
You knew your potential.
I knew, right. And I wanted to do something more meaningful. So I took my mom's advice. My mom, who saw me growing up, knew that I had a passion for being creative. And she said, why don't you call your friend Ed, who went to college, to a broadcasting school, a local school in Westchester County in Yonkers, New York. Why don't you call Ed and see how he's doing? So I picked up the phone. I called Ed after almost 2 years, not talking to him. And, hey, you doing, pal? How's it going? How's college? He goes, it's really good. He said, I really love this. He said, you ought to come down to the college and check it out sometime. He said, you might like it. We have a campus radio station down here. It's really cool. And I have my own radio show. I was like, you have your own radio show? Okay. So fast forward a week later or so, I went down to visit the college, visit the school, and man, I was hooked. I mean, it was a little carrier current radio station with a turntable, some carts, and microphones, and a glass, and it was just exactly what I wanted, and I didn't even realize at the time that So it kind of fell into my lap, and I said, okay, that's it. I'm going to give my notice to Grand Union, and I'm going to enroll in college. This is 2 years after leaving high school. So that was a big transition for me back then, to be able to make that decision. But I did it. I went to this broadcasting school, got my degree, and I had in me, I had this, and this is the way I looked at it because I'm very competitive by nature. I realized that I was 2 years behind most of my friends. That's how I looked at it, right? Because they had gone off to college after high school and I was left behind, so to speak, and I wanted to catch up. And so when I went to college, I took college so seriously, like you can't even imagine. Like I blocked out the world to go to college and to study and do as well as I possibly could. And ironically, Alex, I found college easy as pie. Like as much as I struggled in high school, college was a piece of cake. The motivation was there now. I had the motivation. I could taste what I wanted. I knew that I wanted to be successful. And I knew that through this college, through broadcasting, this might be a vehicle for me. And so, I mean, it got crazy to the point where I would go home and retype my notes. I would write notes in class. I'd take those notes home, and I would type up all my notes on my typewriter, right? Just to get it in here.
Of course.
To get it in my head so I could really, really, saturate myself with the content.
Yeah.
And I was a successful college kid. I did very well in college. But ultimately, the magic moment for me was when one of the professors in my college noticed my desire to succeed, I guess you might want to say. He saw within me, and I never had a chance, unfortunately he's since passed, but I never had a chance to really reconnect with him, and I so wish that I had. But he saw me in the hallway one day. I was in my second semester of school, college. He saw me in passing in the hallway, and he said, "Frank," and he said, "I want to see you at 245 in room 301. Come by. There's an internship at CBS in New York City. I want to talk to you about that."
Got your attention.
Got my attention. I was like, did he just say CBS in New York? An internship? And, I'm shaking. I'm like...
And it was the biggest name in broadcasting that you can think of.
Absolutely. And it's my second semester of college. You're like, why, So anyway, I'm feeling really good. I get on the phone, I get the pay phone, call mom. "Hey, Mom, I'm glad you recommended I call Ed because look, I'm going..." Anyway, I show up at the class. Unbeknownst to me, I show up, there are about 40 kids in the class. I'm one of 40. I thought he was just singling me out, little low me, right, to give me a little head start. And there's 40 kids in the classroom. And I sit down and I'm looking around the class and I'm going, there's no way I have a shot at this. There are mostly seniors and juniors in this class.
Yeah.
I'm a freshman. There's no way. He was just being kind, right? So he goes through this whole pitch with me and he said, "Listen," he said, "there's a internship happening at CBS Radio this summer," and it was the summer of 1980, as a matter of fact. He said, and they're looking for 2 students for a summer internship. He said, he described the job a little bit of what it entailed and everything. It was basically like a sales job, telephone sales, if you will, right? Selling concerts, calling radio stations around the country and trying to get them to buy these live concert specials, right? Mm-hmm. So it was like sales solicitation for that. So he gives everyone the information, and he gives out the guy's name and the guy's phone number, who to contact to set up an interview. I left that classroom at that moment, and I went straight to the payphone again, and I called David West, the name he had given me at the phone number, and I learned this later on, but I was the first person that called to set up an interview. He would tell me later on. What's so interesting about that is that I spoke to David over the phone. I had an interview. I had 2 interviews with CBS. They called me back twice for a second one. They ultimately hired me and one other person for the job, which was awesome. Which was amazing. Yeah. But what was really neat for me was, I'm a suburban kid. I grew up in a suburban area. The whole notion of me going to Manhattan by myself, at 18 or 19 years old was so foreign. It was but I did it. I pushed myself to do it. And I went down for the first interview. I didn't have a suit for my very first interview. I didn't own a suit. So my mom took me out the night before the interview, and we went to Robert Hall in Yonkers. We bought a polyester suit because that's what was popular at the time, you know. And I went on my interview, you know, and the interview went really, really well. I felt comfortable, and you know, I was in Black Rock at CBS, and it was surreal for me. It was so surreal because I'm like, you know, am I really here? I'm really at CBS interviewing for a job, and at the end of the interview, he thanked me. He shook my hand. He said, "Thanks so much for coming down. I appreciate it. Hopefully you'll hear from me soon." I get on the train, Grand Central. I head back up home. It's about an hour and 10 minutes to go home. And I walk in the door, and my mom said, "You got a call from David West." I said, "I got a call."
He called you as fast as you called him.
He called, right, exactly. I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "He wants you to call him right away." So I get on the phone. I'm like, "What did I leave behind? You know, did I leave something?" Yeah. So I call him, and he goes, "Hey, listen, it was really great to meet you." He said, "I'd like to have you come back tomorrow. I want you to meet our president of the radio network. He'd like to meet with you." And I'm like, the first thing I could think of, was, holy crap, I only have one suit. I can't wear the same suit.
Mom, let's go back
Let's go buy another suit. So we bought another suit. I went back to Manhattan the next day. And now, with the second interview, things were a little different.
Yeah.
Now I'm sitting in the president's office, in a corner office at CBS, where back then the executives had their own bar in the office. He had
overseeing Manhattan,
overlooking like Central Park, and it's like surreal. And now I'm getting anxiety. I'm starting to get, you know, there were no panic attacks back then that we knew of, but I was having a panic attack back then. Yeah. I was, because I was like totally out of my element. Yeah. Like I'm sitting in a room and he's all dressed to the nines, you know, real corporate, you know, everything was just so foreign to me and was just so like, but I was exposed to that, and I enjoyed it. I something about it that I enjoyed. That interview went really well. He was very fond of me, thank God, and they ultimately hired me for this position, this internship at CBS. So I worked at CBS radio networks throughout my entire college career, pretty much. I did both. I went to school full time, you know, studying broadcasting, radio and radio production, and then at the same time went to school full time, all the way through the end.
Was your starting pay at CBS any better than the deli?
No, it was far worse.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Worse. I took a dramatic pay cut. Yeah, Great question. Yeah. I took a dramatic pay cut, but you know what? Wasn't about the money for me.
It's a step back so you can do two forward.
Absolutely. Yeah, I needed to be, you know, like all of a sudden, that money didn't mean anything to me. Yeah. I was in an environment and doing something that really made me tick and really made me. The money would come later on. Yeah. I didn't know it then, but it would, right? So anyway, I got that opportunity. When I graduated college, CBS approached me and said, "Listen, we love what you do. We want to offer you a full-time job as a manager." And to this day, I'm the youngest manager at CBS Radio that they've ever had. I was 19 years old when they made me a manager of sales, affiliate relations back then. So, and I'm really, really proud of that accomplishment.
You had 2 managerial jobs before you turned 21.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I never thought of that, but I guess I did or had. And then from there, you know, for me, I just, you know, worked my way through the ranks at CBS. I held many positions over 19 years. I was with CBS Radio for 19 years. I was working at CBS Radio Networks for a good 2 years full-time after I finished college. And growing up as a kid, you know, I mentioned earlier how my dad was in a singing group, a doo-wop vocal group. The station that I listened to growing up as a kid was CBS FM, the oldie station, right? That was I love that station, still do to this day. And who knew that my office from CBS Radio Network was on the same floor as the radio station, CBS FM, the 17th floor at Black Rock on 52nd Street. We were on the same floor. So it didn't take me long to realize there was a big radio station the other end of the, you know, the corridor. And I started making friends with, you know, you start talking to people in the elevator and in the lunchroom, and you start meeting people at the radio station, you know. So, I befriended some of those people, and then I got invites to come into the radio station, check out the radio station, and that was it, man. I mean, it was just like, it was like so exciting, exhilarating for me that I decided I got to somehow find a job in this radio station as well. So I befriended the program director, at the time, Joe McCoy, who I'm still good friends with to this day. Great guy, talented man. I said to him, I really want to work for the station, Joe. This is a station I grew up listening to, and I want to be a part of this team. And so he said, your timing is probably pretty good, Frank. He said, we're actually looking at hiring
a manager.
He said, we're looking at hiring Cousin Brucey as a DJ on Saturday nights. Now, if you don't know who Cousin Brucey is a legendary radio personality in New York City. He has been since the early 60s. He was one that helped bring the Beatles over to America, Cousin Brucey. And he's had a huge, huge following. He was on WABC radio for many, many years. He's a fixture in New York radio back in the 60s and the 70s. And to this day, he's still on the air. He's a fixture in New York radio. And so Joe McCoy said, I need someone to answer telephones, for Cousin Brucey. And you know what? He could have said, we need somebody to mop the floor while he's on the air. Yeah. As you walk behind him with him, I would say, I'll do it. Anything to be a part of the team and to be in that environment. So I started answering phones for Cousin Brucey, and I got a chance to meet him. He took me under his wing, and from there, it really was just like, it was an incredible ride because I was able to really kind of plant myself and establish myself. I became his producer over time, which was so cool. So I've got kind of two separate careers going at the same time, right? School's done, but I have a job at CBS FM. I'm producing Cousin Brucey. I'm doing things on the weekend because it was Saturday and Sunday. And then I work a different program on Sundays, the Doo-Wop Shop, it was called, with Don K. Reed. And then I have the Monday through Friday gig at CBS Radio. So I was working 7 days a week for 19 years. That's what I did. 19 years, 7 days a week. And it didn't matter what the money was. It was making ends meet, but nobody was getting wealthy. And then after 19 years, the industry was changing. Yeah. Consolidation was starting to happen. Radio groups were buying smaller groups, and the industry was shrinking, right? They were becoming less and less owners of radio stations, and it was this big consolidation push. And I lost my job at CBS after 19 years. I was laid off. I was one of 59 casualties on one day. Little did I know at that time, as much as that hurt, that was the best thing that could have ever happened for me because I was comfortable, I was complacent, and but I wasn't pushing myself to go deeper and to go broader. By them terminating my job, I was able to take a step back now and reflect and think, what do I want to do next? What's the next chapter for me?
And were you married at that time already to Eileen?
I was married at the time. In fact, Madison was, my oldest daughter, was newly born, so here I am now, right? I got, now I've got this no job. I've got a newborn, and, what am I going to do? I took a couple of jobs in radio doing different things, syndication, selling. There was sales things that I was doing. They were bridges, temporary bridges for me, right? And I worked for one place for a year, and then that thing would dry up. And then I'd go off to do something else, like most people you talk to, a lot of people try and fail at certain things before you get successful again. You can't be afraid to take chances, right?
Not at all.
You got to take chances and keep pushing and believing in yourself. And I decided that after the third job after CBS, that I needed to do something different. I needed to find another opportunity in broadcasting, not so much in a radio station or working for a radio entity, if you will. But an opportunity came to me. A friend of mine called me up one day and said, hey, there's an opportunity for a salesperson at a software company in White Plains, a broadcast software company called RCS. And I hadn't heard of them before, to be honest with you. And, at the time I left CBS, after 19 years, I was making good money. And what I found myself shocked was that when I started to look at the job market for myself, then, and what they were paying, what this company was paying in White Plains at the time, was another big pay cut I was going to look to have to take. And then I was saying, well, I don't have to commute anymore to New York City. I'm going to save a lot of time, I'm going to save a lot of money there. So that will help offset the lack in salary and all that kind of stuff. So I decided to do it, and
again, taking one step back,
taking another step back,
so you can
exactly.
Move forward, yeah.
And so I worked for RCS for a couple of years, and I'll say as fate would have it, but the truth is, as God would have it, I really believe that with my whole heart, that God really orchestrated and ordained my steps here, because just like that meeting I had in the hallway with my professor that I talked about earlier, the owner of RCS approached me in the hallway in that environment in a similar manner and said, hey, I need to see you a second. I want to talk to you about something. Now, the owner was somebody who would never give me the time of day.
Yeah.
Normally. I was too beneath him.
Yeah.
And I went to his office and I thought to myself, I must have done something wrong. What did I do
Getting
wrong?
fired.
I'm getting fired or, whatever. I went to his office and he started to, he said, hey, listen, you're the last one in this company that comes from a radio station, from a solid radio station. And I have an idea. I have this idea for a new business, right? And I'd like to get your input on it to tell, let me know if you think there's any validity here in this business. So what he laid out for me on a piece of paper, very crudely, was this notion of creating a business where we would be monitoring radio commercials, right? He had a piece of technology, the computers, it was a computer, but he patented a piece of software that gave audio fingerprinting a start. So he had a fingerprinting technology that would watermark commercials, right? And he would take those commercials, put them in a database, and basically, compile, it's a good word, compile all the commercials that the radio stations are playing in New York City.
Is that something similar to the same type of software that tracks how many times a song is played throughout?
Exactly.
Okay.
It's exactly the same thing. So we did it for commercials and we did it for music, right? And the two have very different implications with each other, two different audiences. So he showed me this technology, or on a piece of paper even, it wasn't even on a screen, but on a piece of paper, and he was describing how, he could show the log for this station and show the log for that station. And the truth be told, back in the day, I'm really talking, 30 years ago or so, not that long ago, the only way a sales executive at a radio station or at a TV station or at a newspaper, any media outlet, would really know what advertisers are running on the air at any given time was if they made a note of it when they heard it themselves. So AEs, account executives for radio stations, would carry a notepad in the car. And when they're driving around, going on their appointments, if they hear an advertiser on the radio station, they jot it down. I heard this furniture store at this time, whatever, right? And that was the only way they knew what played, right? There was nothing else more sophisticated. This guy at RCS figured out a way to aggregate all this data and to put it online and make it accessible. So I got so fired up when I saw this crude, pitch that he gave. I said to him, I looked him in the eye and I said, Andrew, if you can make this happen, or half of what you're describing happen, I'm going to make you a very wealthy man, and I'm going to create one hell of a business. And that was enough for him to get very excited and very serious very quickly. And he went out and took out mortgages and some loans, and we started investing heavily in hardware. And a couple of weeks after that, he called me back up along with the president of the company and said, you're not going to be selling the RCS stuff anymore. We're going to take you away from that. You're going to concentrate full time on this project, on this new company that we're going to build. So I became kind of one of, I guess, 2 or 3 first employees of this company, at the time called aircheck.net, and later became Media Monitors, which is what it is today. And I've been with them ever since. I've been with them now 23 years since the inception.
That's awesome.
It's really cool.
And it's in a data-driven world like the one we have today, that your job position is more important than ever.
What's fascinating to me is that when we started the business, we started, AirCheck. It was a radio monitoring company. We were monitoring advertisements just on radio, right? Because that was the thought. That was the whole notion. But after 2 years, I was on planes every week. I was traveling to a different city in the United States every week. And I would go into Cincinnati one week, and I'd visit all the radio stations in Cincinnati. I'd go to the conference rooms, and I would demo Media Monitors or AirCheck, and I get everybody excited, and they go, "This is incredible! This is like the best thing since sliced bread. We have to have this service. So I was like a rock star, literally going to a radio station, doing a presentation in a boardroom. Before I left the meeting, everybody wanted a contract. It was like, and it was just like this habitual, time after time. It was just so predictable. It was such a good product at the right time, and I was so passionate about it. I was 150% behind it. Because I knew how much was going to change people's lives.
And just to explain the reason for the software, if from a radio station perspective, if you can read what every other competitor is, if you can know their advertisers, then you can pitch your idea to their advertisers because they're already prone to advertising on radio stations.
Exactly. Yeah. So the bottom line is every radio station competes with each other. They compete for ad dollars, right? So, for example, Alex, if you work for one radio station in Danbury and I work for another radio station, a competing station, we're competing for ad dollars, advertising, basically, right?
Yeah.
So it was to my best advantage to know who your advertisers are and vice versa, because I want to get a chance to go talk to your advertisers and try to convince them to take their money away from you and put it on my station, right? So that's the business, that's the model. So whether you're in radio or whether you're in television or newspaper or cable, it doesn't matter. The medium doesn't matter. It's it's advertising dollars. That's where the gold is in these hills.
So how is that data read today? Like what systems do you, I'm sure the computers today you can probably take a small laptop that could do the work of of all the computers that you had 23 years ago, right? So how effective is your reading of that data today?
So there's 2 sides to it. So there's the back end, which is where we actually collect the data and it goes on servers, and the data is crunched and verified and all this stuff. But for the end user, for our end user, the customer, it's a web platform. It's a web portal. They go to a website with a password. They log in, and then they can see their market in their town, wherever they're located. They can see all the ads that are appearing in their market, their local market, that are of interest to them. And that information is power. When you have access to information like that, you can make very intelligent business decisions, across the board.
Of course.
Really, across the board. So our company's become mission critical now. We're only one of a very few companies in the space that do this. There's a very high cost barrier to entry there. Fortunately, we did it so many years ago, and we did it right. We did it well, and that's what's kept us standing to this day. And very few have been able to get into this business and succeed, let alone get to the level that we're at right now.
Yeah.
So,
and it was good because over the years, you started small, but you were able to continue to reinvest that money, buying better hardware, building better software.
Expansion into other markets, going into more markets and growing the business. Yeah. We had a great product. So my biggest argument, or my biggest at the time was to our president was, just keep adding markets. I'm going to keep selling this, right? It's going to keep selling itself. Just keep adding markets. But adding markets means coming up with a lot more capital.
Yeah.
And that's, so that was the kind of the tug of war back and forth between myself and upper management at the time. But here we are later. We're in 100 markets across the United States.
Wow.
In 100 markets.
Huge.
It's huge for all media. So we monitor radio, broadcast TV, local cable, newspaper, internet, display ads, and now podcasting. We monitor all podcasting ads as well. So
that's huge.
Yeah, it's a big business. Yeah. It's a very big business.
And of course, we'll leave your information down below once we're done, so people who are interested in finding out more, how can they tap into that data? We'll leave all the contact information there.
Right.
Who is Frank today? So you've given us the overview of who you've been, right? And you've been basically in the same industry, but different fields within that industry.
Mm-hmm.
It's a twofold question. What are the plans for the future, right? You could stop working today and go enjoy life, but sitting at the beach for a full day does not bring you happiness or fulfillment. You're a self-driven individual, and I've noticed that about you ever since I met you. What drives you?
I cannot sit idle for very long. And again, this is just, I look back now, I can reflect and know this about myself. I have a lot of interests. I have a lot of hobbies.
Do share.
Okay, if you insist. I'm a chef. I've been cooking for many, many years. I used to think I'd love to open a restaurant myself, but too much work and too much time. Yeah. I don't want to do that. But I can cook with the best of them, and I'm not a certified chef, but I'm a cook. I'm very much into photography. I love photography, that medium as well. I also I'm an audio engineer as well because of my days at CBS, and so audio. I own my own Christian recording studio for many years as well. I got into that, and I built a home studio in our home, and did that for a little while as well, and just was a blast. I did that with my wife, Eileen. I was a mobile DJ back when there were no mobile DJs. I was one of the first mobile DJs, wedding DJs. My wife and I did it together, so I did that. I'm a watch enthusiast. I love watches, and I do some collecting and flipping and that kind of stuff.
There's good money in that.
There's good money if you know what to buy.
Yeah.
Yes, if you know what to buy. And now my latest venture. My wife and I have created a little. It's not really a business. I wouldn't call it a business. It's a labor of love. We are breeding golden doodles, which is something. If you would ask me 2 years ago, I would have said, "You're nuts. I am not going to be breeding dogs." And we found our way with COVID. Everything changes. My wife is working from home full time, and so we thought about the idea. Came from us from I don't even know where, but we've had golden doodles our whole life. We love the breed, and then we started toying with the idea of maybe breeding. So 3 years ago, we went out. We bought 3 females, 3 sisters, and we just had our second litter. We can have 2 litters a year, so that's why I say it's not a business because we only want to do 2 litters a year to keep really high quality puppies placed in families, in homes and all that good stuff. And it's a ton of work. It's a labor of love. Yeah. We love doing it, and it does afford my wife to continue to stay home and and all that. So I'm breeding golden doodle as well. I can't sit still. And
I remember I shared one of your posts that you had a couple of the pups left, and I've never been contacted by so many people once before. Like everybody texting me and calling me, or they're still available. How can I get in touch with the person? And I'm like, it's, maybe I'm in the wrong field. It's easier to sell golden doodles than it is to sell real estate. Of course, that's completely negating all the work that takes up until the puppies are 10, 12 weeks.
8 weeks of intense labor.
Yeah. But it was it's they're such beautiful dogs, and it's such a good breed for children and for families. And it's good that it's good to know that you guys don't need the income from that, so you do it with love.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So we know that it's done responsibly and all that. Very nice.
No, it's a great hobby, if you will, or something my wife and I could do together.
Of course.
Which is nice too, sharing time together with that. And we learn so much, you know. So we're producing some very quality puppies.
That's awesome. We'll leave. I mean, if whatever links you have, we'll leave awesome. a contact information for that as well. When at the time of this recording, we can say how many weeks or months from now until the next litter is available. Good.
There you go.
Let's move this into when I met you, right? So I met you in church. I've with the many gifts that God has given me, I felt attracted to doing sound because we share the DJing background. As a matter of fact, we share many different traits. Mm-hmm. But I was drawn to that part of church. Can I help in the tech department? Coming from that background and IT and sound and music and all that, and that's where I met you. And of course, I still remember one of our first interactions because you're doing exactly what I needed to learn how to do. Like you're operating the soundboard in church, and you're doing sound for the worship team, and it's in my mind. You already possess something that I need, which is the knowledge behind that, right? Mm-hmm. So I'm already drawn to you. So unless you don't have good people skills at that point, that's the only way you would turn me away. I'm already your fan, right? Mm-hmm. I'm here. I look up to you because you possess this certain knowledge that I need to get. And you turned out to be a great friend, and you turned out to be a good mentor. It was always good to see you there, and oftentimes, you're watching the service, I'm doing sound, and then you come back and you say hello, and then vice versa. Yeah. And of course, I got to meet you and your family. So you have Eileen, and then you have 3 children who are out of college now, or into college, or out of high school, and then going into college. And it's funny that we're having this conversation because I have one that is about to start school. So I can sit here and ask for life advice and advice with children, and I'm sure that you'd have another hour or two to give. But you have been able to take all of your experience out here in the world, in the secular world, right? All the things that you've learned, mm-hmm. all of the sales and the people skills, and also the sound engineering, the DJing, and you've been able to serve the church, the body of Christ, with that. And one thing that I've always been admired by is your whole family is, you guys as a family, you're active servants. You're there often. You never skip a weekend for as much as possible, and you're there because you're people of different skills. You're there not only serving to do sound, but when we do the plays, you're there taking the pictures, and then we use those pictures to invite more people into church. Those are admirable skills because we lack that. We lack, as a church, we lack active servants, people who have taken on that cause, and understanding that there is no church without the people, and we're there to serve each other. What drives you in that department?
So 2 things come to mind. Two things. Number one, my wife and I, we recognize and give full credit to God. We give God all the glory. God has bestowed enormous blessings on us, on our family, not just monetarily, but health, provision. He's provided to us and our family in so many different ways. He's been so faithful to us and our family. We know that, we recognize it, we see it. in operation. We see the fruit, and as easy as it is to take for granted, we try our best not to take it for granted.
Mm-hmm.
And when you realize where it's all coming from, it's not about Frank Cammarata, doing things in my own strength, going out and I have all these likes and desires and these talents and all, but he's given me all those talents and those abilities, right? They come from God. Everyone's talents and abilities come from God. And so we just, it's just natural to want to give back to God, to serve God in that way. And I think, that mindset is where it starts. But then also with me, personally, I've mentored and continue to mentor young people today because I was mentored as a young teenager by so many influential people in my life. And if it wasn't for those people who poured into me, I don't know where I would be today, honestly. Whether it was that professor back in college or, that the owner of the software company and there are dozens and dozens in between who mentored me, right? Who gave me an opportunity, I want to do the same thing. So I meet with interns from different colleges. I hire interns at our company to come in because I think that is an enormous opportunity, right? When you can shadow with somebody in a field, if you can work alongside somebody and see what they do day in and day out, that's going to help you to figure out what you want to do, perhaps, right?
Of course.
So, so I think that those two things are, answer your question, right? It's the fact that we do it for the glory of God. We know and we recognize where the blessings come from, and that we want to give back. And that at the same time we want to mentor people, and to give them encouragement, to go out and do this. Sure.
Yeah. Well, brother, I appreciate you being here with us today. And I'll say this not only in front of you, but when you're not present, you're a source of inspiration. For all the knowledge that you have in the departments that we share, for the beautiful family that you have, and for your just general outlook in life and where you're headed. Such a fun person to be around.
Thank you.
Always appreciate that. Always, would go out of my way if I saw you on the other side of church just to go say hello. You're that type of person. So thankful for that outside of what we're doing here today. And of course, thankful for you being here with us and sharing, some of your life experience with us.
Well, thank
you so much.
Thank you very much for inviting me and all the best on the podcast. I think what you're doing is great. You're reaching a lot of people. And you're inspiring a lot of people through your work, your podcast and all. So you're reaching more people than I am by far with your podcast, which is great. I have to do it one or two at a time. You're smart enough to pick up on podcasting, and you can get to a lot more people a lot quicker than I can. So congratulations. Yeah. Good job. Good job.
Hey, Daniel, we need Frank to have his own podcast. Well, I really appreciate you're a great friend. Thank you.
Great to see you. Thank you.
Well, folks, this is it. Once again, Frank Cammarata here with us, just sharing his life knowledge and life experience. Again, if you have an opportunity, just share this with somebody you know, somebody who was maybe in the same industry and could see value from this. Once again, I appreciate you all, and we'll see you next time.